Right, hello, and welcome back to Real Seekers. I'm your host, Dale Glover, and today we have a special treat for our topic. So I reached out to one of our good friends. A lot of our listeners are familiar with the Unbelievable boards, and I brought on the Christian Marvin Wallace. Marvin, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dale. Thanks for
Excellent.
having me on the show.
No, I'm really happy to have you on in that as well. And in the other seat, we have another guest, someone that the audience will be well familiar with, my old co-host from Skeptics and Seekers, David Johnson. Hey, David.
Hey, how you doing? And for the record, Marvin, I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time, so how about we pretend like we've never met online? Good to meet you.
Good to meet you, David. And a good suggestion. Let's start fresh.
Excellent.
Absolutely. Perfect. And so what we're going to be doing today is I asked Marvin what sort of topics would interest him, and he really wanted to get to an important matter on the meaning of life. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. Basically, we're going to give Marvin, as he's the topic initiator, he's going to get the first word giving his case for about 10 minutes or so. Then we'll give it straight to David to make his counter case on the meaning of life and what he thinks about that. Then we'll have a period for about 5 to 10 minutes where Marvin probes David, and then vice versa. David probes Marvin, and then we'll open it up to an informal discussion. So that's the plan of action for today. Without further ado, just before we get into it, Marvin, do you mind sort of introducing us to who you are for the people that don't know you, who you are, and a bit about your background, and as well give us some of your faith journey?
Yes. I'm a graduate of Biola. They have an apologetics program in 2010. I graduated from there, very interested in trying to understand more about Christian faith. As for myself, I'm from the UK. I'm from England. I've been in Hong Kong over 20 years. I'm a secondary school teacher here in Hong Kong. I teach English as a second language. Amongst other things, I also teach kind of critical thinking and writing. So I've done that for a number of years. In terms of my faith journey, I would say in my early years, I was a believer. In my 20s, I sort of fell out of faith, I think largely through skeptical arguments. And then a number of years later, I became renewed, got my faith back, started to practice and live as a Christian again, and became interested in apologetics when I heard what I think are very persuasive arguments for Christianity, theism, the existence of God, etc.
Nice. That's sort of similar to myself. I sort of fell out in my 20s as well, and then came back. So, all right.
I would say I lived as an atheist, a practical atheist.
Okay, all right. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that about you. So, all right, cool. And just before I let Marvin give the opening case, David, we do actually have I do actually have followers that didn't come from SNS, believe it or not. So, maybe just do you want to give us a brief intro as to who you are and your own journey and stuff and your background?
Sure. I was born a Christian, if that's possible. My parents were Christians, and was born in the very conservative South United States. We call it the Bible Belt, state of Alabama, which is very much Trump country these days. And so that tells you a little bit about the type of Christianity that I lived with for the formative years of my life. I was a young phenom, if I can say such a thing. I was a good musician and speaker, which are both very powerful tools in the church if you can master them young. And so I did and developed those skills. At a young age, I became a music leader and a preacher, and this was my life for most of my life. I have been a leader of some description in the church in 3 different denominations, and this is all before I ended up leaving somewhere near my early 40s, probably just as I was turning 40, when the doubt machine was cranked up to 11 and there was no coming out of the spiral. And so from about that time, my early 40s, until now, I have been an out atheist. And to me, atheist just means someone who no longer believes in God, because up until that time in my life, I never knew what it was like not to believe. And I think the most interesting thing about being atheist to me is nothing has changed. Absolutely nothing. I watch a little bit more football now because I don't go to church. That's American football for you Europeans. Nobody watches that other stuff.
Clarify for Marvin. Yeah.
Right. And so
it just so happens I'm a fan of American football. So
hey, good.
It's okay.
Either one of your teams did well this year?
Well, I like the Giants.
Oh no.
And we were bringing you two together for something. And
that is so unfortunate. Well, living in the New York area, I've got 2 teams to choose from as home teams. I've got the Giants or the Jets, and frankly, neither one. I kind of hate them both, but I've tried to like the Jets this year. I tried to like the Giants last year. It's going to be a rough road for me. But yeah, I found that nothing changed. Nothing changed. It's not like I went out raping, plundering, and pillaging or anything like that. My views on things that were dependent on a conservative view of Christianity, they changed because I no longer was a conservative Christian. I no longer felt the reason to hold those views. But as far as the way I lived my life, that really didn't change at all. If anything, I became a better person. So, yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Cool. All right. So I know that we have a bit of a time constraint, so we're going to be aiming for about an hour here. So Marvin, without further ado, I'll turn it to you to make your opening case in about 10 minutes or less.
Yeah, I mean, I don't need much time. It's quite straightforward. My claim is that the Christian is in a privileged position with respect to the atheist in this regard. With immortality and God, the Christian has meaning, value, and purpose. Without immortality and God, the atheist has meaning, value, and purpose, but that's, you could say, a subjective meaning, value, and purpose, because it's a system that is within a system, a closed system, that ultimately has no meaning, value, or purpose. I'll quote from Craig here, no ultimate meaning without God and immortality. With respect to meaning, he writes, if each individual person passes out of existence when he dies, then what ultimate meaning can be given to his life? Does it really matter whether he ever existed at all? It might be said that his life was important because it influenced others or affected the course of history, but this shows only a relative significance to his life, not an ultimate significance. His life may be important relative to certain other events, but what is the ultimate significance of any of these events? If all the events are meaningless, then what can be the ultimate significance of influencing any of them? Ultimately, it makes no difference. So that's with respect to meaning. With respect to value, Craig writes, if life ends in the grave, then it makes no difference whether one has lived a life as a starling or a saint. Since one's destiny is ultimately related to one's behavior, you may as well just live as you please. As Dostoevsky put it, if there is no immortality, then all things are permitted. On this basis, a writer like Ayn Rand is absolutely correct to praise the virtues of selfishness Live totally for self. No one holds you accountable. Indeed, it would be foolish to do anything else, for life is too short to jeopardize it by acting out of anything but self-interests. Sacrifice for another person would be stupid. That's with respect to value. And with respect to purpose, he writes, if death stands with open arms at the end of life's trail, then what is the goal of life? To what end has life been lived? It is all for nothing. If there is no reason for life, and what of the universe, it is ultimately pointless. If its destiny is a cold grave in the recess of outer space, the answer must be yes. It is pointless. There is no goal, no purpose for the universe. The litter of a dead universe will just go on expanding and expanding forever. And what of man? Is there no purpose at all for him, for the human race? Or will it simply peter out someday, lost in the oblivion of an indifferent universe? Which is a fancy way of saying, if all ends in death, then everything is meaningless because it ultimately ends. For the Christian, I think that because there's a belief in immortality and an understanding of purpose, a purpose that moves towards that immortality, there's definitely an advantage, a healthier understanding of who oneself is in the universe that is coexistence with Christianity itself. And that's what I want to argue today.
Gotcha. Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Marvin. So we'll turn it to David now to give his opening case. 10 minutes or less, David.
Okay, no problem. And thank you, Marvin,
Thank you, David,
for that opening. I just want to say I half agree with Marvin already. And in fact, I think that we could preemptively end the show if all we were trying to do is establish whether life has meaning or not. So Marvin said under atheism, I can't quote him exactly, that life would have no meaning because there's no eternal aspect to it. So I don't believe there's any eternal aspect to it. I do believe that death is the end. I believe that the universe is going to suffer heat death, and I don't believe that life has any meaning. So we're good. I agree with all of that. However, I think where the show might find a little bit more interest and pushback is with the second part of the proposition, which is that under eternity, first of all, that there is something called eternity, and that under that it supplies meaning, value, and purpose to life. And I would simply disagree with that. So it is very easy to write poetry around concepts like meaning and purpose and value. But what we did not hear in Marvin's 10 minutes is anything hinting at life's meaning, purpose, or value. And I think that's the problem for the Christian. So the Christian can easily point to me and say, well, I mean, under your way of thinking, life has no ultimate meaning. I agree. I'd say under your way of thinking, life still has no ultimate meaning. So I think that that's where a lot of the discussion will happen, and I look forward to it.
Perfect. Oh, okay. Wow. That was really quick. Okay. So yeah, I think what we'll do now is, Marvin, I'll turn it to you to be sort of the prober. So you actually get to take over. This is your show now, at least for the next 10 minutes or so. Yeah, you get to probe David's case and probe him on what you think is important to glean details from his side.
Okay. Well, thanks, David. Thanks for the on-point reply. I just want to point out that I didn't actually say there is no meaning for the atheist. I think there is meaning, but the meaning is subjective. What I'm saying is that there is no ultimate meaning. Now, for Christians, I think we believe that. Let me put it like this: would you agree that there is subjective meaning for atheists?
Absolutely.
Or let me put it like this: meaning is whatever you think is meaningful.
Absolutely.
Whatever you decide.
Right, and I would also say that for some people there is no subjective meaning, because for them life is utterly meaningless, which is to say that they don't just ascribe any meaning for their own life either.
Okay, so we're totally on the same page there then. I think that some people, they do believe that their lives are meaningless and are quite, I don't know if you could say happy with that, quite consistent with it. There's a whole list of scholarly atheists who have subscribed to that view, and writers and poets and etc., from Sartre to Godot to Jacques Monod to Richard Dawkins, who sort of, say that ultimately life is meaningless because we're in a meaningless, purposeless universe. But you can attach any kind of subjective meaning you want to attach to life and say, well, friendship is what life is about, or having fun, or being a hedonist, enjoying oneself. That's good. I think what I'd like to ask is, you mentioned that the Christian has no value and purpose to their lives. Is that, did I hear you correctly?
Well, my contention is that the Christian doesn't have any more value or purpose to their lives than the atheist, except for what they assign to it. And they might, in fact, assign themselves a grander meaning or purpose than the atheist does. I don't know that that's true, but as far as intrinsic value and ultimate purpose and eternal meaning, I don't believe in those things. But the Christian certainly has the potential to assign a value and meaning to themselves that's higher than, say, the value and meaning that I assign to myself.
I think part of the argument there is that from the Christian point of view is that the value of an individual is intrinsic to Christianity, because as Christians we believe that humans are created in the image of God, and since we're created in the image of God and represent him or his spirit or part of his creation, that's where the value comes from.
Is the image of God the only thing that supplies the value?
On the other hand, the atheist just sort of ascribes the subjective value that they want to ascribe to an individual within sort of a universe of really equally valuable beings, which is non-valuable. Which is to say, you can ascribe a value to a human, but it's kind of speciesist in a sense. Yes, David, you were going to ask a question.
Yeah, no, I wasn't pushing back. I was just
Sure.
for clarification. Is value under Christianity only value because it's the image of God? In other words, is there some other way that the Christian can see a human having value?
Well, I don't really, I can't really answer that question, because as a Christian I've never needed to. And the reason is because a human being is created in the image of God and has the highest value possible, then there doesn't seem to be any need to think of other values other than the highest value possible. That is to say that an individual is intrinsically worth so much because they are created in the image of God. And I think that that's what the scripture, if you do teach to Christians like me, that you're worth more than gold, you're worth more than jewels, you're worth more than rubies. That's a hyperbolic way of saying each individual is worth an infinite amount, to the point where God would do whatever it took to bring that individual back within relationship with himself.
Okay.
Marvin, you still have 2 minutes left on your rope. Yeah. So, David, what do you sort of ascribe purpose to individuals? Do you think that basically
we could summarize like this. Do you think that in this instance, the Christian is at some kind of advantage in terms of just having a more robust belief that drives them, that supports them, that sustains them, that guides them in life than the non-theist?
Well, those are kind of two different questions. So I do believe that one could have a more robust life if they ascribe a more robust purpose to themselves. But as far as purpose goes, I would have to wonder, if you're talking about ultimate purpose, first, what do you mean, and where does it come from? I mean, how do you know what it is? If it's purpose from a functional point of view, for instance, purpose is in what it was made to do, then I cannot say that Christians have a better purpose than us, because they've never really articulated anything that seems particularly on a high order that they're supposed to do. But it is possible that you can take whatever belief system you have and assign yourself a very robust purpose.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
So do I get to do the grilling?
Marvin, if you're done, is that it for you? You have 1 minute.
Yeah,
so.
that's good.
Okay.
That's good.
All
Grill away, David.
All right, Marvin. So where does purpose come from in the Christian view? I'm happy to talk about assigning purpose, but you're not. So how do you get purpose?
Well, I think purpose is derived from understanding who one is, who God is, and the relationship between God and man. We're told that we're created in the image of God, and I think and we're told the end. How could I put it? The end goal, which is, as the Westminster Catechism states, to glorify God. So one's purpose is to glorify God, because that's the best thing for humans.
Okay, but how do I know that?
Into that right relationship, or do what it takes to bring others into that right relationship, i.e., live fantastic or exemplary testimonial lives, I would say, is purpose.
Right, but that's a nice idea, I guess. I don't actually think of it as a nice idea, but I get that you feel that that's a nice idea for you, but you're saying that is everyone's purpose. It's not just something that you made up. So I would like something a little bit more empirical. Where did you get this purpose from? I don't know if it's stamped on the bottom of your foot. I don't have that fine print stamped on me anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where did I get that purpose from? Yeah, I don't know how you could get sort of an empirical measurement for purpose, because I would imagine that purpose is not an empirical thing, right? Purpose is to say a goal towards which one is designed, right? I'm not sure that that's an empirical thing. I would say an empirical thing is something that is used to measure.
Okay, so how do you know the goal we were designed for?
Primarily that comes through the senses. That's kind of understanding and being sort of cognizant of an external reality or reality through one's sensory apparatus. Now, I don't think purpose can be boiled down to that. I can't see it anyway. But I don't know, maybe somebody can correct me on that one. Where do I get that from?
Yes.
Where do I get my understanding of purpose from?
Yes.
I think I get my understanding of purpose from the Christian narrative, from a broad sweep of the Christian narrative, and also from specifics. I think that's what the Christian narrative does. I think that's what the Christian narrative testifies to, is consistent with, in at least my experience and the experience of billions of people similarly. That's where I get that from.
Okay, so I actually don't have a problem with that being your purpose. What I have a problem with is if you say, "Oh, and that's also your purpose." That's everybody's purpose. That's the ultimate purpose. I don't know how that moves to category of ultimate purpose. So if you feel like your purpose is to fear your God and keep His commandments, great. I don't find that particularly noble, and I don't find that to be my purpose. And so I guess I'm not sure how you make the leap from that being your purpose to that being the purpose.
Oh yeah, sort of not kind of getting what you're saying there.
Right.
When I say ultimate purpose, mm-hmm. I mean, if we think of ourselves now and then look down the line to 1 billion years, to 1 trillion years, to 1 trillion billion years, what is one's ultimate purpose? Is it, where will one be in that amount, in that duration of time? What is it that one has been, what is here for? And I say, according to the Christian narrative, which is what I believe, one's ultimate purpose is to spend that period, is to be in eternity with God the Creator at that duration of time. So everything that will have happened, everything that one does, every move that one makes, every relationship that one has can ultimately be realized in some positive way in 1,000 billion million years' time. That's what I mean by ultimate purpose. I can't kind of grasp how that relates to other people, other than other people believing the narrative, believing the Christian story, and deciding for themselves that that is their ultimate purpose. And that's a free will decision.
Okay. Well, as long as we're talking about purpose as a free will decision and not something imposed upon us by nature or some such, I'm perfectly willing to talk about purpose in that way. I just don't see anything ultimate about it.
Yeah. Well, let me put it like this then. It's ultimate in this sense. In an open system that one that transcends death, then there are ultimate trajectories that continue. Okay, so that's why I talked about such and such duration of time. On the other hand, in a closed system where there is a finite amount of time, no matter how long that time is, the end result is death. So whatever happens, whatever takes place, whatever relationship, whatever one does within that time frame, ultimately ends in the nullifying act of death.
So, Dale, I have time for one more question?
You still have 3 minutes if you want it. Yeah.
Okay. So I wanted to talk about this idea of eternity for a moment. And I honestly don't see what that has to do with purpose or meaning or value. So just sticking with the language that we're using right now of purpose, the only purpose I can imagine, if we're talking about eternity, is to live another moment. Your purpose is to live another moment, and then your purpose is to live another moment, and then live another moment. That seems meaningless to me. So it is a thing that you do. It is a function. You keep living another moment, but I don't see how that adds anything meaningful or purposeful to your life. So whether you live the life of a mosquito or whether you live a life of an angel, the length of the life doesn't seem to have anything to do with whether it is a purposeful life or not. So can you tell me how longevity gives purpose?
Yeah, and the reality is longevity doesn't give purpose, because longevity without meaningful existence would be torture, right?
Right.
You could live forever and have a meaningless existence, and it would be torture.
Right.
But what does change the equation is to have things to do, have relationships, have growth and learning. So it's those kind of things with eternal life or immortality that give meaning, not just duration of time. Duration of time on its own could well be torture.
Okay.
Perfect. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah,
I had a quick follow-up. So you mentioned learning and growth. Theoretically, if you've got eternity, then you could learn everything. So what happens after you know everything now and have grown as far as you can grow? Do you still have any purpose then?
Well, theoretically, I'm not sure that works theoretically because, you could approach infinity but not achieve infinity. And even if you did approach infinity and not achieve infinity, then there are still other things like meaningful work and relationships that potentially could bring meaning aside from absolute knowledge. Omnipotence itself, I'm not going to argue, is what brings meaning, though it would be good. But there are other things allied with continual learning, continual relationships, continual growth that will bring meaning.
Thank you.
In my opinion.
Okay, perfect. So that wraps up the formal portion of the debate, and this was or the discussion. Sorry, this was just sort of meant to give us an idea where each side is coming from, what are their positions, get clarifications, and that sort of thing. So, yeah, now comes the fun part. This is the informal part where I open it up to an open dialogue between the two participants. You guys have been doing great, being respectful of each other, not interrupting each other, and that sort of thing. So, let's open it up now. You understand where each other are coming from. What do you guys think? Let's debate who's right. We'll start. I'll throw it open to Marvin to get started, as he was the opener or the initiator.
So this section is sort of an open debate.
It's sort of like an open discussion, like have a free conversation.
Yeah, well, it happened. I don't really hear that there is too much we are disagreeing on. David, maybe you could highlight an area where you think the Christian is weak, because I'm not hearing too much.
I don't disagree on much because there hasn't really been a proposition really that I can sink my teeth in. So I'm perfectly happy talking about meaning and purpose and letting Christians assign their own meaning and purpose and value, and not arguing with that. And I think the Christian can do the same and allowing me to assign my meaning and value. Now, the Christian can always think to themselves, well, but your meaning is really meaningless. But that's fine. And I can think that about yours. But I think that we still recognize that to ourselves, we have meaning and value and purpose. I don't see how eternity changes that. And I agree with what Marvin said in his last statement, that you can have eternity and meaninglessness. I agree. I would flip that on its head, though, and say you can have temporality and meaningfulness. Now, it would be meaningful up to a time, but that doesn't mean that the time that you had was bereft of meaning. So once again, I'm always a little bit confused when Christians talk about meaning, because I'm not entirely sure what they're saying they have that I don't. We just have a disagreement on what the specifics of that meaning is and how we assign our own values. But Dale, maybe you can identify maybe there's some definitional work that needs to take place, because I'm fairly sure that Marvin and I can't possibly agree. So
Sarah will be bitterly disappointed. So, I think one point that I heard that you guys were saying is you sort of brought up this relativistic notion. Maybe why does there have to be this one ultimate purpose for everyone? Like a one size fits all. Maybe there are purposes. So Marvin, do you think that there could be multiple purposes? And how does that relate to there being one ultimate purpose? Maybe that's a start for discussion.
Well, I certainly think that you can assign your own purpose, and I think that that's what people do. So yes, there are purposes, and everybody's purpose to themselves is the purpose. But my point is that once you know the end of the story, right, whatever purpose you ascribe to your own view, you hold that in the knowledge that ultimately it is purposeless because of the way the story ends for the materialist or the atheist, who's going to say that, all ends in death. So since all ends in death, that's it. The Christian, on the other hand, doesn't believe that all ends in death. So they believe, and the word here is believe, right? It's a healthy belief because it's a belief that ought to drive all kinds of positive behavior, thinking, relationships, and action. Okay? Now, because there's that belief, that drive should be towards, whatever it is to fulfill the purpose. The materialist, on the other hand, can believe that, anything as superb, as brilliant, as beautiful, as wonderful, as fantastic as they like. And I'm all for that. But if they have contemplated the question, there's still the knowledge in the back of their minds that, it's just temporary. There is no ultimate. And I'm equating ultimate here with eternal purpose. So I think that that's where the difference is.
So isn't it possible that your estimation, though, of the human psyche is just wrong? Because for instance...
Let David go. Come back.
Okay, yeah. So I personally just don't recognize the types of descriptions that Christians make when they talk about this. I am a person. I believe life is utterly meaningless in that there's no ultimate assignment of purpose or value to it. But that said, I like mine quite a bit. Mine has quite a bit of meaning to me and will for as long as I hang on to it. And I don't feel any type of existential angst over the fact that I'm going to die one day. And I also don't feel any existential angst over the fact that the universe is going to suffer heat death one day. These things don't make me then want to say, oh, well, I guess I want to, check out of the social aspect of the species and start raping, plundering, and pillaging. There's nothing about those things that I find appealing. I don't think that would be a better life. I steal as many things as I want to right now. I rape as many people as I want to right now. I pillage as many villages as I want to right now. There's nothing in me that's saying, oh, life would be so much better if I went outlaw and did those things. Have you any idea how tough life would be trying to live it that way? So even if you say I'm only living my life via motivated self-interest, which I would say that's probably true, that leads me to a very social, accommodating life with other social beings. And so I just don't recognize this dreary story that you tell, that if somehow you don't have some ultimate purpose, that you're going to suffer all kinds of existential angst. Furthermore, just to round this thought out, I know a lot of Christians who have existential angst, and they supposedly have purpose. In fact, because I have known more Christians than atheists in my life, far and away, most suicides that I know, in fact, I think I can say 100% of all of the people that I know personally, have known who have committed suicide, have been Christians. So I just don't see how this provides any practical value for the Christian that the atheist does not have.
Okay. Thank you very much, David. Sorry for the interruption. I think when I'm quoting or when I'm saying that it's an advantage to have ultimate meaning and meaning, value, and purpose in life, or an overarching narrative, that is the data that comes back from sociology and psychology. That's why it's often been touted by sociologists that even if there isn't a religion, we should make one, because at the end of the day, these things are kind of healthy narratives that bind communities together in single ideas and relationships that propel, you might say, human flourishing. So it's not that I'm suggesting this. This is what the scientific data is suggesting. Yeah, I'm sure that some Christians live in angst. Difficult to understand how, but I suppose that's to do with their relationship with Christ. And yeah, I've known people commit suicide, and I've never known a Christian commit suicide. The only Christian that I've heard of that commit suicide was one that did so, who was a pastor not long ago, and it kind of made the airwaves. Everybody else that I've known who's committed suicide tragically has either been an atheist or a non-believer, and I'm afraid to say quite a high proportion of New Age people have sort of thought that they were going onto a higher path. I happen to live on a hippie island, which is populated by a lot of kind of New Agey type people, and there's been one or two who have decided to end it all through believing, I think, cranky narratives.
Interesting. Okay. One another thing that I find interesting. So you, Marvin, you sort of equated meaning to eternality, right? It has enduring. It's this ultimate thing that I'm talking about. Gotcha. I obviously I'm in the same boat as yourself as a Christian. I sort of see meaning as meaning a value. There's a valuable purpose, and obviously in terms of the meaning of life, the existential angst comes because we want something supremely valuable purpose or supreme value in terms of our end purpose. What I was sort of asking is, could there be valuable purposes that are temporal, that aren't eternal? So Jordan Peterson gives the example of a symphony. It doesn't last for forever and ever and that sort of thing. But in the moment, it has a valuable purpose. So I guess. And what can I say? I'm a big Beethoven fan, and I love symphonies. Today I've been listening to Bela Bartok's fantastic quartets. They're wonderful, and they have meaning temporarily.
Yeah. So again, I can agree with almost everything you said earlier. I mean, I think we could debate statistics and social science some, but it doesn't matter ultimately. I think that a person who ascribes or feels a sense of purpose is probably going to be psychologically more healthy than the person who doesn't. But that doesn't mean that their sense of purpose has to be, serving the Christian God or living forever or some such. And so, it bears out that human beings live perfectly good, healthy, happy lives for the 80 years they're on the planet. And their purpose may be very temporary. They're remembered by their loved ones and maybe, a generation or two after that. But eventually people forget their name. They forget they were ever on the planet. And, someone else continues with the story. And so I don't see that life as being any less valuable or less fulfilled than the Christian who thinks that they're going to go to heaven when they die. Now, we can say, well, but what if they actually do go to heaven when they die? And I don't think that really affects the question of which life had more purpose. I think we're at that point only talking about which life has greater longevity.
I've got a good question here, actually, that I think you two will definitely have different perspectives. So let's grant, for the sake of argument, Marvin's perspective that, in order to have meaning, we need this enduring, supremely or ultimately valuable purpose. Why is God necessary to have that? Buddhists would say they have that with nirvana as their ultimate valuable purpose. I'm sure Tara thinks she has her ultimate purpose with the universal consciousness or whatever she said. Yeah, maybe let's have a discussion. Why is it that God, the belief in a monotheistic God, is necessary to have this ultimate purpose? What do you guys make of that? And
so I know you're asking Marvin here, but let me just jump in there because I think it's an excellent question, a good way to think of it.
It is a good question.
It does not matter to me, for instance, let's just say that I'm wrong and that there is an ultimate purpose, an ultimate meaning to life. It doesn't matter. If a person has something that is functionally their ultimate meaning and it leads them to live a happy life on a higher plane and they're very social and they are healthy and wealthy and wise and whatever a good life is for them, if their fake ultimate purpose produces the same results as your real ultimate purpose, then functionally and practically speaking, they're indistinguishable.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, that's a good point from David. I mean, first, going back to your point about the universal consciousness, I mean, I can only talk about ultimate value, meaning, value, and purpose in terms of Marvin. And if to be something that is not Marvin, or not to be the individual that I am, is to fulfill those criteria, I just can't understand. I mean, to be absorbed into some kind of conscious whole and still have the character that I have, and have, meaning, value, and purpose fulfilled, I just can't see how that can be the case. It's such a different category. Now, in respect to David's point, David talks about there being a functional indistinguishability. I think he is right that there are instances that people could perhaps never even think about the question and live lives that are functionally indistinguishable in terms of meaning, value, and purpose from theists and non-theists. And I get that. But I think what I'm trying to say is, once you have the knowledge, or once you think about the question, and you may, live indistinguishably, but the truth is you believe, or the truth is you have knowledge. You have knowledge that basically it all comes out the same in the wash, and that is death. Now, I don't think many people, think, okay, since I've thought of this existential end to me as a person, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do whatever I want, when I want, how I want, who I want to, etc. I don't think many people do that, and we couldn't build or couldn't sustain societies in which people do that. But I do think that once the knowledge is there, the knowledge is there, and it's trained. You can't kind of have an objective meaning from a subjective meaning. Once you know the objective meaning, it's either objective or it's not. It's either a fact or it's not. And I think this is where Christianity differs from atheism.
Right, and I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with you feeling that meaning is objective. I'm simply happy to have you understand why I don't see it as objective, and I am also happy to negotiate what should be the end goal of a well-lived life here on Earth, without regard to whatever next phase there is, because we both have to share this planet. Mm-hmm. And so we both have to, no matter what you think your ultimate purpose is, no matter what I think my purposelessness is, we have to negotiate life on this planet together. And I personally think that you and I would be able to negotiate a very amicable existence, even though we do not agree on ultimate purpose. And so for my part, it's just not that important. I don't spend any time thinking about ultimate purpose beyond, I want some cereal. Oh, am I out of milk? Do I have $6? How do I get $6? I never really have to think about life at much higher of a level than that, honestly. I guess it's fun for the purpose of discussions like this, but I don't think most people live their lives in universities thinking about this stuff.
Well, that's interesting because, in a sense, the existential point is that you never existentially think about the existential questions, which I can understand. I don't really sit there either thinking, if I take a shave today, how will that affect eternity? It doesn't really happen like that, because most of the time I'm working too hard to sort of have time for those thoughts. But I do think that there are times when one does have those thoughts, and perhaps subtly and healthily, I think the Christian is in a position where they have a robust system that can drive them on to do the best with what they've got in any given situation if they approach life in a Christ-like manner.
Okay, so can we go into some discussion about specifics of the Christian view in particular, and why I don't find that view to be helpful in describing meaning, value, and purpose? This is going to get into a little bit of controversy, and I don't know if we have time to do it, but I'm asking for permission to maybe try something a little bit more challenging.
If it's okay with Marvin, because this is his topic. I'm assuming. Do you have a problem with that, Marvin, or?
No, well, we're cool. We'll go on for another 5 minutes, so Davey can fire whatever he wants. It's okay.
That's fine. I don't even know if I can get the question out in 5 minutes. So let me work on that. So I think for me, when I read the Bible, the worldview of the Bible, the God of the Bible, none of this gives me confidence as far as my value as a person or my purpose. So I look at the Old Testament God. I know that you probably don't spend a lot of time thinking about some of those passages in the Old Testament, but they're real passages. And I think about the level of killing that happened in the Old Testament, and some of the reasons that it was done, and some of the comic book ways that it was done. And I think that God can't possibly value life, human life, not like I do. There's no way I would authorize that sort of thing. And we get into the New Testament, and we discover from the words of Jesus that the majority, I tend to characterize it as the vast majority of people who ever were created, are going to hell, some version of hell, whatever that is. And so I get to Paul, and Paul tells me, well, you know what? Some are made as flower pots and some as chamber pots. And you don't get to ask. You just get to live the life God gave you. And so it seems to me that under the most optimistic Christian view, most human life is forfeit. And you compare that to even the most flawed humanistic view. There's a better outlook for me than that. So I would just quickly say that that's some of the reason why when Christians start talking about human life and value and purpose, it just it does not connect with me. Where am I wrong?
Okay. So,
what do you think, Marvin?
so we're getting towards sort of Old Testament criticism and the problem of evil.
Right, and you don't even have to deal with the Old Testament stuff if you don't want to, because, like I said, the New Testament outlook isn't really any better.
Yeah, I guess you could phrase it this way. Is there anything in David's trying to say there are things in the Bible that seem to run counter to this ultimate purpose that you're alleging to? How would you respond to these types of incidents that come across as being contradictory to,
okay. So I can understand the point as you phrased it. Well, I think that the overall narrative of the Bible is one of God doing whatever He can to bring people back into relationship with Himself, because we are imbued with ultimate meaning, value, and purpose. The Bible, for me, as I've mentioned before, is the Heilsgeschichte, which is the unfolding of salvation history. That is God's redemptive plan played out through history. That's everything working towards bringing people who freely choose to be with Him, and I'm not a Calvinist, I'm not a determinist, I'm a libertarian, into relationship with Himself. So there are times when individuals have tried to thwart or hinder the Heilsgeschichte, the unfolding of salvation history. It is at times like that when it looks like you may argue that people seem to have no value, but the overall narrative is that He has done whatever it took to bring people back into relationship with Himself. And I also think that the research has been done that Jesus came at the right time exponentially to bring the most people into relationship with Himself as possible. So I think there are two claims there, and I would address both of those claims like that.
All right, perfect. Yeah, I did have.
Yeah, Dale, please.
Oh, no worries. I was just going to say I did want to ask David a probing question on the
Please.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, if we have time. Okay, so David, I think we'll ask Marvin. And in terms of the grounding, pretend there is this objective ultimate purpose, and you get convinced of this. If that's true, do you think that there are other hypotheses other than positing God that can ground this ultimate purpose at all, or?
Well, I think I'm probably worse than that, worse than you're imagining. Even if you could prove that there was an ultimate, and by ultimate, I'll just say original purpose for all of this, because I really do get lost in what we mean by ultimate. It's not something I would tend to apply to purpose. But let's say that there was an original purpose. God made us, put it in a box, and put the instructions in the box, and this is what this thing is for. And we we found that out, and I didn't argue with that. I still don't think that the ultimate purpose is. I think that's informative, but not prescriptive. Descriptive, but not prescriptive, if you will. Because if He gave my life to me, and it belongs to me, I still get to assign my purpose. And so it's a little bit like giving a toy to a child. And the toy that you give the child is a remote control car. And it's very expensive, and it's got delicate parts, and you show them how it operates, and they get all that. and then they pick the car up and start banging it on the floor because it makes a really nice noise, and they love the way the pieces fly off when they hit it just right. They get great joy out of that. Well, there may be an ultimate purpose to that toy, but that child is not bound by it. The child has assigned it another purpose that gives them even more joy than rolling around with a remote control. So even if you were to prove to me that there was some kind of ultimate purpose, I would only see that as descriptive. I still would not see that as, therefore, this is how I have to live my life.
Okay, perfect. Okay, well, I think what we'll do at this point, because Marvin, I think we've come to the end, so Marvin's got time constraints here. So let's just close out the show with a short closing statement from each of you, just sort of wrapping up your cases. Well, since Marvin got the first word, we'll give David the last word. So Marvin, yeah, maybe just take 2 minutes or something to give sort of a closing summary of your case.
Yes, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. I think that what I would say is, to reiterate my point, the Christian is in a very healthy position because we believe that we are created by a loving God. He created us for a reason, with a purpose in life, with a purpose in mind that imbues our lives with meaning. And because we were created by a loving God who created us in his own image, and the Heilsgeschichte that he took out to bring us back to himself shows us that he himself thinks that we are imbued with ultimate value. I hope that Christians grasp that, put it in their psyches, and live out lives that do justice to that good thing that God has done for us. And I think that I would also hope that some unbelievers or people who are not so convinced with the Christian message would kind of understand that, this is just such a positive aspect of Christianity. And I hope that opens their eyes up to what I believe is the truth of the gospel.
Excellent. Okay, David, the final word will be yours. Take a couple minutes to give your sort of closing statement of your case.
Okay, I'll be quick. In fact, I'm just going to eschew making a closing statement in my case because I think it's been pretty well made. So with my 2 minutes, I'm going to say thank you for inviting me on this show. Marvin, it has been a delight having this conversation with you. And I hope that we can do it again. You are welcome to join us on Skeptics and Seekers at any time. I assure you, the conversation will be just as good there. I would love to get your opinion on some of the things that we talk about there. As far as a thing like ultimate purpose, ultimate meaning, ultimate value, I would agree with Marvin on a lot of it. I think that life tends to go awry for people, especially certain personality types, when they lose a sense of value, when they lose a sense of meaning, when they lose a sense of purpose. And I think the Christian is not the only one who needs to be in the business of helping people discover a purpose worth living for. I think that skeptics and atheists have a responsibility to help people find purpose in their lives too, because the opposite of Christianity is not nihilism. And so I think that my side could do a lot better in articulating a purpose and helping people who find themselves lost and purposeless to not be that way and to find healthier and happier lives. And so I'm happy to join Marvin in that effort to give people help people find a better sense of purpose than hopelessness.
Excellent. Perfect. Yeah. Well, I just wanted to, as the host of the show, I just want to say thank you so much to both David and Marvin for coming on. It's been a great conversation, very cordial, very substantive. So, I hope you guys both enjoyed your time on the show. And yeah, I'd love to have you guys back anytime as well.
It was wonderful. I'm blessed that you had me on the show. Hope that we could do it again. It's been a pleasure speaking to David, who's a very articulate with a very articulate and precise speaker, and I hope that we can do it again. And this time, he can shout the subject, as it were.
Gotcha. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I'd love to do that. Set that up. All right. So just so the fans know what I've got coming up in the works after this show. So next week on Wednesday.